Hello and welcome to MediaBeat. I'm Chris Ariens, editorial director of MediaBeaster.com. We're here with ABC News anchor Bill Weir. Bill, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You have been with Nightline now since August.
Yes.
Fairly new, but spent 6 years doing GMA Weekend.
I did.
Nightline is on a tear right now. Some of the best ratings in about 17 years for that show. What's going on over there?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I feel like I got traded to a pennant contender, pennant winner. Really, it's fantastic. And the ironic part is that about 5 years ago, I was part of a couple different experiments when they were trying to figure out what to do with the new Nightline. Mm-hmm. Ted Koppel was leaving, that era was ending, and they had no idea what they wanted to do. So one weekend they called a bunch of random people into a secret conference room on a Saturday, and they said, now don't tell anybody, but we're going to experiment with potential new formats for Nightline. And one of them was a sort of quasi-daily show hosted by myself and Jake Tapper. And at a certain point, I sort of raised my hand and said, you realize The Daily Show has about 50 of the best comedy writers in the world? No offense to the present company, but dying is easy, comedy's hard. Right. And little did we know, as we were taping it, Ted Koppel and his whole staff were watching it on an in-house channel, much to our humiliation. Mm-hmm. And but 5 years later, look what happened. Yeah. And they figured out the obvious format is just great storytelling. Right. 3 really insightful, interesting pieces a night, and the audience is eating it up. Yeah. Knock wood.
And you were in Chile recently as the miners were literally being pulled out. The first few miners, you were live at 11:35 on the East Coast. Tell us what that experience was like covering it. 1,400 journalists there, you being just one of them. Mm-hmm. What was it like to be there? What was it like to cover this story? Did you sleep at all? I mean, you're in the middle of the desert.
It was amazing. First, you got to understand, Chile is a beautiful country, except for this corner of it. It's a moonscape. There's not a tree for 100 miles from where that mine was. It's way up in the desert. And so it was, I got the call, we have an editorial call in the mornings, and James Goldston says, how do you fancy going to Chile? And the next thing I know, I'm on a 10-hour flight. We land, we rent a van as fast as we can. We drive another 10 hours, get to the site just as the rescues are beginning. Timed it sort of perfectly. And they pulled the first guy up right as we went on the air at Nightline. And then in sort of poetic harmony, we were on the air the next night live as the last guy came up. And in between it's why you do this. It was the most sort of exhilarating, unbelievable spectacle. I slept maybe 45 minutes in the back of a pickup truck, and it was freezing cold. Mm-hmm. But you go on power bars and Red Bull and adrenaline, and then when it's over and they say you're good-nighted, you sleep for 36 hours.
And luckily, it's probably a 12-hour plane.
Yeah, it was a long flight back, and I cocooned up for that. But I'm going to remember that one for a long time. That was a great story.
So how does that compare with reporting from war zones, Iraq, Afghanistan, which you've been to both those countries?
The one drawback, and I'm not the first to bring it up, is when you're embedded with U.S. forces, you're really only seeing one side of the story. You're with American troops, thank goodness, because they're literally looking out for your life. But you don't get a chance to wander, and that's kind of one of the real joys that I find in this job is when the seatbelt light goes off in some country you've never been to before, and the door opens and there's new smells and new sights, and you can really explore at your own pace. That doesn't happen in a war. But I'm itching to go back nonetheless. I was in Afghanistan last January, and I'm jumping up and down hoping to go back again. That is the sort of, certainly my ultimate experience as a journalist.
Right. And you've had some pretty amazing experiences with ABC. You've been to, Egypt, Dubai, China, Madagascar. You did a live report from the Great Barrier Reef. You were the first person to report live, first American to report live from Tibet.
That's right.
But then you've also reported from places like Rochester, Minnesota, Green Bay, Wisconsin. What did you learn beginning your career in local news that you still kind of put into practice today when you're around the world covering these stories?
It's amazing. I think about that a lot. And when I was in Rochester, Minnesota, Austin, my first TV job was Market 7,000 or something, I think, southern Minnesota. It's where they make Spam. That's the point of pride there.
A lot of Spam stories.
A lot of Spam stories, a lot of at the Hormel plant. But I was a one-man band. I started as a one-man band with a huge one of the old Ikegami 3-chip cameras and the 3/4-inch deck. And we actually had wooden tripods. We called them the Gilligan sticks.
Did you whittle them yourself?
Yeah, that's right. We felled the tree. That was your first job, is to make yourself a tripod. But it was 150 pounds of gear, and you'd schlep around to go shoot, you know, the two-headed calf or the girls' volleyball game. And there were no such thing as producers, really. You shot it, you cut it, you wrote it. And now, you know, and more often than not, I'll be in some place with my 2-pound, you know, Sony HD camera and a much lighter tripod, and we can cut on our laptops and quick link from anywhere in the world, and that's obviously where this business is heading. So it really comes full circle. That experience, most valuable thing I've got.
Yeah. So you've been given these pretty great experiences traveling around the world, which brings up the issue of international reporting. And do you think the networks are doing enough these days, throwing enough resources at the news that's going around the world?
No, not at all, not at all. And I think that comes at great consternation to everybody. And it's not because the desire is not there as much. It's just, you know, we're living in this contracting era, trying to make do. Our you know, ABC. This is a great story that I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but I've heard it from a couple different ABC veterans. But Roone Arledge, back in the Wine and Roses days, you know, with limitless budgets and 3 networks, it was basically an oligarchy running network news. He used to throw a big party somewhere in some exotic locale, and one year he rented out a castle in Scotland and flew everybody over and wanted to enter the party to trumpeters playing bam, 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 bam. The ABC News themes, only these British or Scottish trumpeters didn't know it, so he had a desk assistant fly the sheet music over on the Concorde.
Wow.
Now, even if that's a little bit exaggeration, it still is an indication of, you know, of the grand old days when we had 35 foreign bureaus.
Yeah.
And now it's, you know, it's all calculated in terms of what's the plane ticket going to cost to get you over there.
Sure. And what's the need to a particular show?
What's the need to the show? And we certainly are getting leaner and meaner by necessity. But there are certain stories that would have been sort of no-brainers in the Peter Jennings era, just because that's where the mindset is, where now we're sort of forced to dial it back. But when there are obvious stories of huge global impact, or certainly have impact on this country, we like to think we're still out in front, just not as much as it used to be.
Right. Bill Weir is going to stick around. We're going to talk more a little bit about how Bill got into this crazy business and where the business is going from here, so stick around.